So tonight really is about you know, inspiring women, influential women. We say it's about empowering women. And, you know, I'm about to introduce what we like to call in the business the competition. I work at Q13 Fox, and I am introducing an influential woman at King 5. In fact, she is the first woman news director at King 5 in Seattle, Washington. Trust me, in this industry, that is no easy feat. So I want to introduce you to someone who is very influential in the news that you watch. It is a part of the information that you get, I mean, in your everyday lives. So, Cheryl, Carson.
And I thought it was important because we hear so much about news right now and fake news and just all the different things around news and the controversy. But these individuals really do bring us our news and what's happening around the world. So I thought, who better would it be to bring Cheryl Carson in here and just have an open conversation with you. So Cheryl, if you could talk to us a little bit about what you do and talk about King 5 and local news.
News people don't get to do a lot of fun things. We have a lot of things we do that aren't so fun but are important. So a little bit about King. We are 70 years old this year. And we are very proud of the legacy here in the Seattle area. I am particularly proud because our company in November of 1948 was started by a woman. Back then, women did not own TV stations and radio stations, let alone an NBC station. She fought for that. She found a way to get to the men at NBC and get the NBC affiliation. Now, 70 years later, I am...
70?
Huh? Wow. 1948. And we've had several different ownerships, but for the first time, when they named me to news director 2 years ago, I was the first female news director, and I think it took a little too long to go from a female owner to a news director 60 some odd years later. But I'm very proud of the legacy of the television station. We produce 11 and a half hours of news a day, and then you add to that our programming with Evening. Many of you knew it as Evening Magazine. Now it's just Team Evening. And New Day, which is our magazine show in the morning. So altogether, we're producing 14 hours of news a day that we also run on King and Kong, our second station, which is the most news of anyone in this television market and the most news of anyone in our company. And I'm very, very proud of what we achieve each and every day.
So Cheryl, when you hear about the fake news, and we hear it from people, we hear from sometimes people in political offices, we hear it just people saying fake news, how does that impact the morale of your team? So your producers, your news anchors, your reporters, how does that impact their morale?
I think at first we were all quite insulted, but I think now we have taken it as a challenge because what we do is important. It is so important to have news organizations, local news organizations. The cable organizations right now, I don't even want to speak to that because sometimes I look up and I listen and I don't understand what's happening and the things that are being said and done, but that's not us. And when we're out and this happens, people just see the yellow jacket that we so proudly wear at King and they'll go fake news. I'll say, well, wait, come back here and tell me what you mean by that. Help me understand what that means. Don't just say something because it's being said so many times. Give me some idea why you just said it. A lot of people just say it because it's being said. Because a lot of things are being said right now that shouldn't be said. A lot of things are being put out there on social media. And social media is really what has led to this whole fake news thing. And the only way to combat it is to be truth seekers, to be the people who are out there trying to make a difference in our communities. And that inspires me every single day. And anyone who says that what we do is fake, I would just invite them to come in and talk to me about it. And that's how I feel like we can combat it. We can't get angry about it because that's just the way people are. There are a lot of people who are ignorant out there. And it's our job not to get mad at them, but to educate them on the things that they don't understand.
And so, Cheryl, when you look at social media, So can you talk about how social media, how we can integrate social media with news so that the younger generation, the millennials, and I think Generation Z is coming up right behind them, so that they can be watching the news more? What do you think are some of the things that we can do to integrate social media and news?
Oh, social media. I wish we could go back to the days when we didn't have it. Did I say that out loud? Oh, yeah, I'm over 50. Okay, everybody over 50, yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy about it. You know, social media it's just part of what we do. And there are so many different, I think every day there's something new that comes out. There are people on YouTube with the weirdest names that have millions of followers. And I look at it and I don't get it. They can eat a burger and millions of people will watch them eat the burger. I think the biggest thing with us is we have to embrace social media and we need to find the audience that's there. We experimented with a news show in the afternoons and we are finding that audience because we're reaching out to them on different platforms. And the one thing everybody has, if they don't have a Facebook account, if you're not on Instagram, if you're not on Twitter, do have a phone. So we have opened it up to texting live during our show, and we respond to you live. And that way gives people an opportunity to reach us without having to have an account somewhere or go into an app. And we're finding that we're reaching people there, and then if they're on Facebook, we're going to grab them there. If they're on Instagram, we have to be there too. And quite frankly, we haven't figured it out yet, but we're working really hard to do that.
And so speaking of, so I'm sure we have over 100 high school students in this room. Thank you, Boys and Girls Club. They really showed up. They brought about 60 students out here. Another one of my mentors, Lisa. And so when you think about that younger generation, Cheryl, and the Katie Hall Foundation in particular, out of our 12 college ambassadors, 4 of them are communications and journalism students. Where is news going, and how do they know they're going to have a job when they graduate in 3 to 4 years?
Yeah, absolutely. If you are somebody who is curious and always asking questions and wanting to know why and not accepting the just because answer, and it's in the news media, it's still the right place to be. If you're curious, if you want to make a difference in your community, I knew I'd never be like a heart surgeon or somebody that saved lives. I picked a profession that allows me to make a difference. And I wasn't in the police department, but I did do some undercover work with the DEA in Wilmington, North Carolina. It's underwater right now. And I almost quit TV to go be a DEA agent because I wanted to get the bad guys that were bringing in cocaine. And the agent said to me, don't you ever quit what you're doing, because there's always another bad guy and there's always another DEA agent. But what you have is the power to report on it and to make a difference. So don't quit doing what you're doing, because you are making a difference out there. And don't quit investigating people, and don't quit holding people accountable that are doing bad things, that are corrupt, that are not following the law, and who are taking advantage of people who don't have a voice. Give people who don't have a voice. So that's, if you're curious about that, about life and about making a difference, then media might be the career for you. And while a lot of people are saying that the news media is dying, I don't believe that. I don't believe that for one single minute. I think we're more important than we've ever been. I intend to continue to be a part of the community and make a difference. And that's what King's entire motive is about, is making a difference in this community.
I have one more question for you, because Zenobia just looked at me and she said, Kela, you're over time. So when you look at this list, Cheryl, you look at all these organizations right here in your state, and like Alexandra said, some of them are national organizations. What would you say to those leaders in the room right now on how they can connect with you and connect with the media to be able to tell good stories that's happening in their companies?
You didn't tell me I had to wear my glasses.
I know, sorry.
Again, over 50. I think the best way is we still answer the telephone and we still answer our email. And I always follow up on LinkedIn, and I'm even trying to get good about Facebook instant messaging. I'm out there. You're never going to see me post about a hamburger. You're never going to see me post where I'm eating dinner or anything. You might see my dogs But you can always reach me, and I answer and return phone calls of people, not the people who are mean. If you don't have the decency to be nice, I won't return a phone call. But if you reach out, we will respond to you. And I would say that we have a management team at King right now that is super open, and we want to work with each and every one of you. And many of you on here, I know we do work with. So please feel like you have an open invitation to just call and tell us what you're thinking. One of the things we did, and I'll make this really fast, with our Take 5 show, we were supposed to debut it the day after the Olympics in February. And that Friday before, I said, we're not ready. The show's just not ready. And I said, we're going to stop. We're not going to do it. Everybody looked at me like I was crazy. They said, you just got to take it. Go. With leap of faith, go. And I said, no, we're not ready, because we just put together a show where all we did was ask each other if we were doing the right thing. We had to go out and ask people in the community. So we started bringing in focus groups from people that we chose from our Facebook groups, that people who spread the word in diverse communities came in, and we asked them to watch what we were doing. And then we said, tell us what you think. It was hard. People were really brutally honest, and that's what we wanted, but it hurt, some of it. And we went, you know what, thank God we did this. And we're still not there. We're not perfect by any stretch. But when we reach out and ask for people to be a part of what we're producing every day, that's when we see that we're doing the right things and we're reaching out to the right people in the community. And unless you reach out to the diverse populations out there, people of all walks of life, you're never going to really be able to produce a product that people are going to want to watch if you think you know everything.
Thank you so much. And before you leave, just a few words. What would you say to the younger version of yourself? So if you roll the clock back about 30 years, when you were in college, maybe high school, what would you say to that younger person about media and what you're doing now?
I didn't think about that.
I should have prepped you, sorry.
That's okay. Here's what I tell people in school. You know, if I give speeches at schools, and when I went back to my school last year, I tell them that communications and journalism is a really big thing to study. That's not all you should focus on. I think you should always learn another language. And parents out there, if you give your child a gift of anything, giving them a second language is a gift of a lifetime. And it doesn't matter what language it is, but another language, so that you can enlighten others around you about diverse cultures and populations. I think I tell my younger self that I should have paid more attention to my history classes, my political science classes. I focused so much on just the career of journalism that I didn't broaden my reach that I should have. And I spent a lot of time on the job than going back and doing what I could have done in school. So my younger self, I would have said, you know, don't make as many mistakes as you made along the way. I made mistakes, but I learned from them. And as long as you learn from your mistakes and you move on and you take something from it, you know, life has offered a lot of challenges. And I see myself as a survivor of a lot of challenges. And I'm never going to be a victim of anything out there that's happened along the way. I dust myself off, get back up, and I do it again.
This evening, Women on the Rise, the third annual, we've titled it Influential Women Edition. I feel like that's almost selling it short, because not only are we talking about influential women, every person you've heard from this evening, we're talking about the first African-American woman chief of the Seattle Police, the first woman to lead King 5 News Department. I'm about to introduce another first as well. Lisa is not only affecting the community that we live in, but it's really about the youth. It's about our future voters, our future leaders. They're going to be the people who are making these speeches coming up here pretty soon, and Lisa's doing some incredible work to change the lives of these young girls and boys. So Lisa, the stage is yours.
It is very much a privilege to join tonight's discussion. It is a privilege to stand here and to have this platform. For too long, women have been at the back of the room, feverishly taking notes and taking note, learning and absorbing all that we can to reach that critical point of perfection where we can finally earn the right to be at the table, to have a platform, and to share our beliefs. The question we often ask ourselves in the dark parts of our minds are, am I blank enough for that? You can fill in the blank with whatever is in your head the most. Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Am I thin, tough, funny, qualified, young, old, cool enough? Am I enough of an expert to use my voice? Will they find out I'm an imposter and take my platform away? You will notice that men don't often ask these questions. And tonight, we come together to celebrate the inherent power of women with voices. We collectively shut down the toxic voices forced into our heads by a culture that is light years behind where we know we can and we should be. We take a big, deep breath, and we look to our left, and we look to our right at our sisters, and we come together to acknowledge the groundswell of women's leadership that is changing this world for the better. We're here tonight to celebrate women on the rise. But what does it really mean to rise? I ask because as we gather together this evening, this powerful room of women and a few who appreciate women rising, thank you, David, and I all assume the idea of rising means different things to each of us. To rise is situational. I, like many of you, have risen many times over in my life. And often, I believe I'm in a constant state of rising. And I'll also share in a moment the story of the women in my family and what it looks like to rise over the course of generations. I rose up this morning in pursuit of a peaceful morning routine as I brushed away the frustration from my teenage son as he rolled his eyes at me for the 12th time that morning. You know what I'm talking about. I elevated my voice and purpose with conviction and grit as one of the first women at Amazon. And when we didn't, at the time, yet have a phrase to describe how tech bros can dominate a culture. I rose up and took charge of my body and my health during my journey to motherhood, when it seemed that only a miracle would make that dream come true for me. I climb tooth and nail every day as I fight for opportunity for the young people in our community who do not yet have a voice or have a platform. And I grow as a leader and people developer every single time a bright female staff member steps into my office and she's full of potential and she's full of fight. I'm also so aware that as I rise, I climb on the backs of the women who came before me. Each of them rose to the occasion and the possibilities of her station, her lot in life, and her pursuit of a better future for herself, for her family, and for her community. My grandmother, Helen Eng, was born a U.S. citizen in the early 1920s. Her father died when she was 4 years old, and at the time, women in the Chinese ethnic communities were considered the property of their husbands, and they were subject to the rules and the local governance of the family associations. The Wong Family Association approved my great-grandmother's request to marry, follow me on this one, to marry her deceased husband's best friend, whose surname was Wong. The Wong Family Association approved the marriage with the caveat that my great-grandmother's 4 young daughters, ages 2 through 8, had to be given back to my deceased great-grandfather's family in China. They had never met them. And so my grandmother and her 3 sisters were taken away from their family and sent to China. They spent the next 18 years of their lives there on a subsistence farm in a village that had no running water, with people that they had never met. Each of those 4 girls returned to the U.S. decades later, sometime around the early 1940s, late 1930s. My grandmother, Helen, was a very determined woman. She never had formal schooling because in China you have to pay for your schooling. And she often talked about being orphaned at the age of 4 because she was never told why she was taken away. My great-grandmother was never told where her children were sent. The men of the Wong Association lied to my great-grandmother. They told her that the girls would go to live in New York with someone, and the girls were never told anything about their situation. One day, someone appeared, took them on a train, and then put them on a boat. In spite of this, Grandma Helen became a successful businesswoman who ran a series of successful restaurants in New York. Because of her determination that we all have a better life through education, in 3 short generations, we have gone from no formal education and dire poverty, because those girls, if they did not catch food in the local pond, they wouldn't eat that night. And now every grandchild, my generation, has post-secondary degrees. Every one of us, all 7 of us, have gone to college, and we've gotten MBAs, PhDs, MAs, and MDs. Grandma Helen was a tough and determined woman who always told me to get a clean job. That's a job where I wouldn't have to wash my hands every night when I got home. And she always told me that education could never be taken from me. She told me to go as far as I could because she could not. She taught me to never give up on my dreams, and that she would always be there to dust me off and pick me up when I failed. When I graduated from Wellesley College, I told her I wanted to go back home and work for her in her restaurant. And at this point, she was close to retirement age, and she was going to take advantage of the dream of traveling. And she told me no. She said I had learned too much, and that my family was counting on me to bring them forward. She told me that restaurant work was not for me, that I was better than that. She told me I needed to make my education count so that my family would be proud, and that no man, no person could take my future from me. My grandmother Helen sacrificed so much for me and my siblings and my parents. Although she passed away 14 years ago, I think of her every day. And every day I wake up and think about how she had the courage and the conviction to rise up. And I strive to rise myself and to make her proud. And I think every day of how can I pay her back for this life that she has given me. And the best way I can be the person that she believed me to be is to be like her. To be that person that always finds a way. The one that gives generously to her family and her community, and who inspires every girl, every woman to reach for her dreams. Grandma Helen wasn't the fastest, and she wasn't the smartest, and she never got her 15 minutes of fame. She never got a high school diploma. She never wrote a resume. But she did have 2 children and 7 grandchildren, and she gave me the greatest gift I've ever received. She taught me that is nothing, no more powerful force in this entire universe than a woman who is empowered to dream. Women create life, we nurture life, we sustain life. A woman who believes can make anything happen, and when she chooses, she will make anything happen. So my original question, what does it mean to rise, can also be answered with the collective, with everyone in the room tonight. Women individually rise when women collectively rise, and I deeply believe that this is true. The more women at the table, the more robust the conversation, the more holistic and inclusive the problem solving, the more just and equitable the culture. I am the first female CEO of Boys and Girls Club of King County in 75 years. This is meaningful in a number of ways. First, I have upwards of 400 full-time staff members, closer to 700 when summer camps are in full swing. And I'm acutely aware of how all the young women, many of whom are here tonight, and many of my staff, are the most passionate youth development professionals in their own right. They viscerally react to seeing their perspective reflected in their leadership. And internally, so many of these young women have approached me to share how powerful it is to see a woman at the helm of a cornerstone community resource. And not just a woman, but a single mom, a woman of color, and a working parent who understands precisely how difficult it is to raise a family and to need help. Second, I'm working hard to strengthen our organizational EQ. So what do I mean when I say organizational EQ? I mean this. Organizations think and feel as a collective. And when an organization has a high EQ, it retains and develops the best talent. It is a safe and innovative learning space where the very best ideas bubble up into action, and the very worst are just a sign that better ideas are yet to come. It's a place where equity and inclusion matter, where the needs of staff and clients are met with care and empathy. And an organization with a high EQ also adapts and changes with the changing needs of the community that it serves. And third, the fact that I'm a woman in the CEO role means that the tens of thousands of little girls that we serve every year can look up to the top and see a face that looks like theirs and a voice that sounds like theirs, creating opportunity for them. And how incredible is that? That each and every Boys and Girls Club little girl gets to run into the club every afternoon with the knowledge that someone just like them has their back and cares about them and is working hard every day to ensure a better future for them and for their buddies. I'll close with a thought on women's leadership that comes directly from Grandma Helen. I believe that women have unique compassion and emotional intelligence that can carry us to a better future. And we are inherently adaptable to ever-changing realities with a built-in moral compass that always steers us in the direction of what is best for life. This compassion and moral compass is built into our DNA. And when we look at each other that way, the combination is explosive. And when you put your hand out to raise up another woman, the combination of our power is exponential. There is a phrase that I use quite a bit, especially when talking to those young people that I see spending their 20s wisely, those young ladies who are killing it and working their tails off in pursuit of a better future. Remember to lift as you climb. And I have a very deep belief in the concept of lifting as I climb. What do I mean by this? I mean, first you take care of yourself, and then you reach a hand out during your own upward movement to bring other women up with you. It is so much more than breaking a glass ceiling. To me, that very visceral concept of breaking a glass ceiling kind of falls a little short of the collective ideal, because when you break a glass ceiling, shards fall on people below you. And I'm talking about paving roads and building infrastructure that allows for the future success to amplify. In Sherry Moraga and Gloria Anzaldua's incredible book of writing from women of color, This Bridge Called My Back, author Donna K. Rubin writes a poem that I repeat to myself very often. The bridge I must be is the bridge to my own power. I must translate my own fears, mediate my own weaknesses. I must be the bridge to nowhere but my true self, and then I will be useful. She describes both the need to heal and care for ourselves, yet for the purpose of our collective climb. We walk on the backs of other women to reach our full potential, and these powerful words underscore for me the importance of doing the same for others. My success is only meaningful in relation to the continuous rise of the women around me. I lift because it is the right thing to do, and because I am where I am because I had a mother and a grandmother and a community of aunties as springboards. I am bound and determined to be that springboard for the generations that come after mine. I will leave you this evening with this call to action. Can you take a moment each and every day to proactively lift as you climb? Perhaps it's a quick note to a colleague to thank her for speaking up with her opinion during a tense meeting. And maybe it's taking an hour to meet someone new for an informational coffee and share your career path. Maybe it's just making a personal connection, helping another woman with her job hunt. It is always taking on mentees with care, compassion, and enthusiasm. And as we celebrate women on the rise this evening, please join me in contemplating that question. How can you lift as you climb? Thank you.
But how can we all lift as we climb, as Lisa says, throughout our prospective industries, throughout our prospective roles? I think it's something that every single person can do in this room. I also love when she says when young girls can look up to the top and see a face that looks like theirs, a voice that sounds like theirs. How important is that in every role that we play in this community? Lisa, thank you for your words. So, Kela, I want to invite you up to take your seat, and I also want to invite the panel this year as we get this started, Year 3, Women on the Rise, Influential Women Edition. So all the panelists come up, this is your time, and we're going to give you an opportunity too, throughout the evening, we're going to have audience questions as well. So all of our panelists, please come up, take your seats. We're so excited to have you this year.
So this is a panel with 7 influential women who have all mentored me one way or another, if they know it or not. I want to start off with introducing Lisa Chen from the Boys and Girls Club first. Catherine Gibson. I met Catherine Gibson through a male ally. I was 10 months pregnant again, the second pregnancy, and he was like, you have to meet Catherine Gibson and Cindy Runger. And Catherine Gibson has welcomed me into Rotary, so I'll officially be a member, I think, in October, to Rotary number 4. Check out Rotary. It has been life-changing, and I've only been going for like a month or 2, and it's been amazing. I plan to die a Rotarian. And then Kim Vu, we met 3 years ago, and Kim Vu works for Bank of America. She's amazing. And the first year we met, she listened to me, and she's like, yep, go ahead and get out there and do the work. And I came back year 2, and she said, you're doing good. I came back year 3, and she said, I'm in. So Kim Vu. Kim Vu, thank you so much. You really made me get sharper and much more professional in my presentation, so I appreciate you. And then Uma, she is so interesting. She works for Swedish. She works with a pediatric doctor, and I have 2 girls, and as we know, diet is a big issue sometimes that really affect kids as far as like their behavioral issues. And so Uma will be able to answer some questions about that. And then Carmen Best, I appreciate you so much. You have also been a mentor as well. And so we couldn't do the panel without Carmen. And we all know all about her, right? The first African-American chief of police. And then Cindy Runger. I just love her. She was the first woman that I've heard use I'm a tycoon. And when I saw that, I was like, I like her. I was like, she is bad. I told my husband that night, I said, I am joining Rotary just because she's a tycoon. And I'm a tycoon too. You don't hear people using that language a lot, and I loved it about her. And she's the first, again, first woman of color, president of Rotary number 4. Give it up for Cindy Runger. She's bad. Come join us at Rotary Wednesdays, downtown Seattle. I think 11 o'clock. No, 12 o'clock, right? 12 o'clock. And then last but not least, the beautiful Debrena Jackson Gandy. Highline board of directors. And that's the whole purpose of this conversation tonight, to talk about women having their seat at the table. So I'm going to kick it off with a few questions, but like Alexandra said, we really want you to be involved. So are there any mics in the audience? Where are the ambassadors? Ambassadors, where are you? Can you guys stand up? I'm going to need you guys to move around, okay? This is the last day I get a chance to manage you, so work with me today. So we're going to have you guys move around. We really want you to participate in this panel. I'm going to kick it off, and I'm going to start right there in the middle with Uma. Uma she's so modest, but Uma, if you could talk to us just a little bit about pediatrics, and if you could talk to us a little bit about the diet of children and how that impacts kids having autism and other different behavioral issues as well.
Well, again, I want to thank Kela, the KD Hall Foundation. It's a sincere privilege and honor to be here. I feel like I'm probably the least privileged person on this panel. It's just a pleasure to be here in this group. Thank you all. So Kela's question is about pediatrics and how diet affects behavior primarily. I would actually ask, how does diet not affect behavior? So not only is eating social and affects how we feel, but specifically what we put in our mouth is who we are. That is one of the biggest passions I have in terms of pediatric gastroenterology, which is what my professional specialty is. And I'm very empowered about teaching mothers and teaching fathers and teaching caregivers about what we feed our children from the moment that they're born impacts how their brain grows, how their entire cells and their gut microbiome and their neuroscience is going to be impacted for the rest of their life. So it's not about how does diet affect behavior, but how does diet not affect behavior. We are literally what we eat.
Very nice. Cindy Runger. So in its 109-year history, you're the youngest woman and the first woman of color to lead the Seattle Rotary number 4. Why now? And is the tide finally turning as a result of the national climate and the Me Too movement?
Well, I do want to start off by, thanking Kela for having me here. This is a phenomenal group, and I really enjoy meeting these women and looking forward to hearing their stories. And I also want to say happy birthday, Kela. It's your birthday tomorrow, right? So to go back to your question, the Me Too movement, probably not, because I think all of us got here despite of everything that's happened to get us to the Me Too movement. However, maybe the national climate. There's a Chinese proverb, how do you move a mountain? Move a mountain one stone at a time. And so there are a lot of women and men who have moved stones, Maya Angelou, Gloria Steinem, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, all of these women have moved barrels of stones to get us to where we are today. So that's part of it. Part of it is, I think it is the national climate. You have social media, you have the millennials. So there's just a lot of information out there that, for people to understand, that there have been inequities and injustices. And for people who are empathetic and feel like they are empowered and they can do something. And so I think people are doing something right now. It is true, we're celebrating that I am the first woman of color and the youngest woman president of Rotary in 109 years. But thank you. Thank you. It is major, and interestingly enough, when the nominating committee had, selected me and I was elected by my peers, that wasn't part of the discussion. It was part of the discussion, what was part of the discussion was, Cindy worked her way through, by the support of, my other fellow Rotarians, and I climbed the ranks, and here I am, because this is where I belong. And I've, put together this amazing group of people that are in the back. Hi, Rotarians in the back, make some noise. So, I think there's, it's just that the time is right. And so, I would say for, all the corporations and nonprofits out there, take a hard look at media, your executive team, because if you really want to represent your shareholders and represent the stakeholders, you need to have diverse voices at the table. And so, it's taken 109 years. We are here. I think it should have happened earlier, but we are here, and I think America's, starting to move in that direction.
Very nice. And another Rotarian, I promise I'm not trying to just be an association, just ask the Rotarian questions. However, I want to go to Catherine Gibson. So the other side of community servant, Gibson successfully submitted the highest mountain on each continent. Explain the relationship between the skills needed by an executive leading an organization and those needed to be successfully to submit high peaks.
Thank you for the question. Well, first of all, I'll say I think all of us have our mountains, whether they're literal or figurative, and we need to figure out how we're going to climb them. And I think there's a great synergy between actually the physical aspect of climbing mountains and the physical aspect and mental aspect of our figurative challenges and mountains out there. And in my experience, it takes some common elements. And I would say those would include vision. You've got to have a sense of where you're going and understand why. You need to be able to do it as a team. I think teamwork is incredibly important. It's been mentioned already tonight. We don't get anywhere on our own, and that's true in mountaineering, figuratively and literally as well. I think you also need to have good communications. You need to be really clear and articulate what you're doing and why you're doing it. And obviously the last thing, which is so important, I think, across anything we're doing, and that's planning. Having a good plan.
And you just came back from a vacation, 2 weeks.
Yes, I did. I had a chance for the first time that I can even think of to actually go offline, disconnect for 15 days. I was doing a backpacking trip down in California. And I have to say, the first day or two, I was very worried, what about this? What if this happens? And then you just let go. And you know everything's going to be fine. It'll just be there when you get back, and it was.
We have a lot to learn from you, because I think a lot of times as women, we either think a lot about our careers or our families, and a lot of times I know I personally do not think about my own self-care, and that's really important, and I think I have a lot to learn from you, so I'm looking forward to working with you. And then Kim Vu. All right, Kim Vu. So I'm going to ask you a different type of question. You do a lot of work that's important to Katie Hall Foundation, such as working with the youth. Can you talk a little bit about the programs that Bank of America, which you guys did this summer with the Special Olympics?
Absolutely. Happy to talk about it. One of our key focus areas for Bank of America Foundation is focused on youth workforce development. And actually, I'm really excited to be able to be on the panel with Lisa, because one of the programs that we just wrapped up was part of a summer program that we partnered up with local organizations across the country to start an intern programship for high school students to learn about banking and finance. And so we actually partnered up with the Boys and Girls Club of King County, and the very first high school intern completed the program at our Rainier Beach Financial Center this summer. Along with that, we have a key program called our Student Leaders Program, where we select 5 high school juniors and seniors, and we pay them an 8-week internship during the summer, but not to come work for us. We actually have them go and work in the community for local community organizations. And the purpose of doing that is to really expose them to different community organizations, to community stewardship and leadership, and really give them the opportunity to think about what it means to be a community leader. And so during those 8 weeks, they go and they work directly with the executive director. They work with the program management team. They work in fund development. They go to board meetings. They have a project that they work on for the nonprofit during those 8 weeks. We also send all of the high school students from across the country who are participating in the program to Washington, D.C., where 200 students come together to learn about civic activism and how to really coalition build. And they meet with their legislators and talk about the issues that are impacting their communities and what they can do. And this year we were really excited because USA Games, as we all know, came into town this year, and we were thrilled to be able to participate. And we had our 5 interns actually work with Special Olympics this year. And it was such a transformational experience, not just for them, but also for us to be able to work with them so closely with an organization that we're incredibly passionate about as well, that really celebrates inclusion in our communities and in our workplace. And I actually want to share a little story and a quote by one of our interns who participated this year, named Sarah. She's a rising senior from Redmond High School, who started an organization on campus at her school that helps to bring more awareness and inclusion for individuals and students at her school that have intellectual disabilities. And so to be able to intern this year with Special Olympics was a really extra special experience for her. And she said in a recent interview that she had she said, there's an entire population of people who deserve to be included. I don't want people to see me as one-dimensional because I wear a hijab. In my internship this summer with Special Olympics through the Bank of America Student Leaders Program reaffirmed that people with intellectual disabilities aren't one-dimensional either. And so it was so powerful to be able to work with so many amazing high school students. And over the years that we've had them, we've had over 100 student leaders participate in the program here, just in Seattle. And so that's just one of the things that we've been doing that we're really excited about. Youth workforce is really key to the work that we're doing.
Absolutely. Debrena Jackson Gandy. I just like saying your name. It just sounds like you should be very popular. So Debrena is, doesn't it? She's a chair. She's on the board of trustees for Highline College, and Debrena was a part of leading the efforts of hiring Dr. John Mosby, who's here in the audience, the first African-American president, so another first male ally, first African-American president at Highline College. Debrena, can you talk to us a little bit about that process, and do you think the fact that you are also an African-American woman had anything to do with you being able to be a part of bringing the first African-American president to Highline College?
Well, you know my answer is going to be, I sure hope so. But first, I just want to congratulate all of the other panelists and say I'm just so delighted and so honored to be up here among such power and beauty and brains. So thank you, Kela, for asking me part of this. Well, I am on the board at Highline, and this was my first opportunity to be a public servant in this way. So when I started in November of 2012, I didn't know anything about what college trustees did. I didn't realize that community colleges had trustee boards. So my learning curve was very steep. And I didn't know the difference between a fundraising board, a governance board. And at Highline, we're a governance board, and there's 32 colleges in our system, and the 5 trustees really are the boss of the president. And we're responsible for hiring and evaluating the president, approving the budget, and also approving tenure for faculty. And so when it came to a very unexpected departure of our past president because of a medical issue that surprised him and also the campus, we were really caught off guard because he had another 7 or 8 years that he planned to be at our college before he retired. He was well-loved, very popular, and helped to make Highline such a force in the community college system. And so as it turned out, as Kela mentioned, I was rotating into being chair of the board the very year this change and this time of instability and uncertainty and losing a beloved leader was happening at the college. And I remember calling my mentor in this case, who's Dr. Thelma Jackson, who's my mother as well, who has 20 years in elected public education policy making and also was on the board at Evergreen State College and served as the chair. And I said, oh my gosh, the timing could not be worse at a time when Highline is going through all this change and upheaval, and we're off center because we lost our beloved long-term leader. I rotate into being the chair. And this wise woman says to me, isn't that perfect timing? And so she said, you can have a legacy of making a huge difference in your year and bringing in a new leader and showing that you could be at the helm at a tumultuous time, or you can have a legacy that says something very different. Which is it going to be? So when it comes to the outcome of having the first African-American president at Highline, which happens to be the oldest community college in King County, and only the 4th president at the school, so we have long-term presidents at Highline. I want to think that I had something to do with it for several reasons. One is when it came to the makeup of the search committee, being very adamant about what that composition needed to look like and reflective of our campus, which is over 70% of color. Also, when it came to our search committee, our search consultant that assisted us, I was on the search committee instead of on the consultant search committee versus the committee that actually reviews the applicants. And we chose a consultant that was of color. Next, I said to our consultant, if we're really serious about having a diverse pool of candidates, then we will have to not just wait for folks to respond. We need to outreach, pick up the phone, make phone calls, and let individuals know we're serious about you applying for this position. And the consultant, because we hired the consultant and we're the consultant's boss, said, of course. So I don't know if that particular word would have been given. Pick up the phone, create relationship, let folks know we're interested, reach out instead of just waiting to be reached out to. And let's see, what would another, one other piece of it is as I was listening to the barriers that people talked about, particularly for people of color making it to the presidential position, you know, in the community college system, it's over 55% of color. But when you look at the 33 community colleges, you see a very small percentage that have presidents that reflect their student body makeup. And so, what we decided to do was look at what were some of those barriers that have kept of color candidates being selected as president. And one of the things I kept hearing is the requirement that the individual have a doctorate. So there's something called ABD, all but dissertation. And there's a lot of individuals who that's the final piece they haven't yet completed for a whole bunch of reasons. It could be financial, it could be family, it could be medical. I mean, the list goes on. And sometimes because of those various factors, you may find that an applicant of color may have ABD as their condition to the full bestowal of their doctorate. So as the chair, I said, and I was on the committee working with the consultant, I said, we're striking that. We're not going to have that requirement. It's going to be preferred. It is not going to be required. And because I was chair, no one could override me. And that, I want to believe, made a huge difference in the candidate pool that we got. So I don't know if all those elements would have been present if I wasn't chair, but I know they were present because I was.
I love that. And Lisa, let's speak to another chair. You were a chair at Bellevue College. Yeah, you was a chair at Bellevue College, Board of Trustees as well. Can you talk to us about why is it important for women to be represented on Board of Directors?
Well, Kela, I think you said it really well, that the numbers of women on boards are so low, we can only go up from here. And when women are in the room, women's voices are represented. Our experiences in the world are so different. And the world in this country, the business world, the education world, are dominated by men because they are the ones who've gotten all the advantages. And it's time for us to really take advantage of the collective power that we have. I mean, you see the women sitting in front of you, and if you look at your tables and look around the room, there are powerful people here. The dialogue, the experiences, we all become enriched when women's voices are represented. I mean, everybody is here because a woman gave birth to you. Now tell me that that isn't powerful.
I'm not going to argue with that. And then last but not least, as we're talking about women in leadership, there's also male allies, right? And so Carmen, you work in a male-dominated profession. Can you talk to us a little bit about, as the chief of police of Seattle, what are you most proud of the women that's working underneath your leadership?
Well, that's a really good question. I hope everybody can you hear me okay? It's a really good question. Women in our organization have added so much in terms of their experience, their willingness to work with community. One of the things that we're doing, we're actively hiring. So anybody who has any person that they know over the age of 21 who wants to be involved in community service and giving back, the Seattle Police Department is hiring. We have good wages and the benefits. I have to start with that because we really need people on the department. But women have added a lot to the profession. One of the things that we did in terms of even our current recruiting is often on television, you see it's all car chases and gunfights and rappelling from roofs and all that sort of thing. But really, policing is about service. That is what we do. the vast majority of the calls we respond to are people in crisis, people at really vulnerable moments. The officers on our department are at the front lines of homelessness, of poverty, all of the tragedy and unpredictability that is inherent in the profession of policing. And I will tell you that women are extremely suited to be out there in the community having compassion and care for the people that we are coming across every day. You know, we go to a lot of calls, almost 10,000 calls a year, people in crisis. Not people who might be in crisis, people who are actually in bona fide crisis, who need assistance, who need service. The officers are on the front line of that, and I can tell you that the women officers, this is not to disparage the men officers, they do a great job as well, but women officers really add something to the ability of our police force to provide the service that the community needs. And the profession is constantly evolving and changing. I use the example often, you know, in 1800s, you know, if you hurt yourself, they might amputate your arm and have you bite down on a stick while they drink a swig of wine or something. But, you know, they don't do that anymore, right? We've evolved, we've grown, we've learned a lot about how to treat people medically. Actually, when you were talking, I was thinking, if food is what we are, I'm probably just a cheeseburger and a bag of fries. Oh my God, that was terrible for me to hear. But I will say that, that, you know, the women add a lot to the profession, and it's really important. And I've learned a lot from the women. My former boss, Chief Kathleen O'Toole, she was amazing. I mean, I give her full credit. You know, 4 years ago, I didn't even have the position of police chief in my, you know, it wasn't even on my radar screen. She saw something in me, and she gave me an opportunity, and I took full advantage of it. And I see something in, you know, the women that work in our organization, and I want to make sure that they have opportunity. And the ones sitting at that table, they take full advantage of it, because it's really important that we lift each other up. I think Lisa said that earlier. We have to lift each other up. As you're going up, you have to reach down and make sure that you're looking around, and I mentioned it earlier, to see who's at the table and see who's not at the table, right? And be very deliberate about making sure that you're being inclusive on all fronts. So that's my long-winded way of saying it's really important to respect and admire and lift up the women in the organization, and the women that we work with in the police department that I've come across have been amazing. Pat Hayes, are you still here? You know, Pat, she spoke earlier, she was my first supervisor. You can imagine being a young officer, my first supervisor happened to be a woman of color like me, right? And she helped me out. And, you know, and I'm sure she never would have thought back then I'd be sitting here, but you know, stranger things have happened. So I'm just really proud to be a part of the organization, really proud of the women that we work with, and think they've done a really good job with the Seattle Police Department. So that's it.
No, thank you, Carmen. And then Catherine Gibson, I want to come back to you. Yes. Catherine, you know, I'm just going to kind of come off the questions. I like to just have casual conversations. You have redefined your career 4 times. Every decade, you have started something new. Can you just talk to our audience? I personally redefined my career back in 2015. I quit my job with a 1-year-old, and I said, you know what? I really, really enjoy being in the business of people, so that's what I'm going to do, no matter what it takes. Can you talk to the audience, some of the people who are, some of our bigger girls and some of our younger girls, about what does it take to redefine yourself? And when you're at the lowest moment, that happens, right? When you're starting something new, how do you keep yourself motivated?
Okay, if I'm hearing that right, it's kind of a 2-part question.
It is.
How do you transition?
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe it's by starting out and appreciating that wherever you start isn't going to be what you're going to be doing forever. And I think there probably was a day and an age where women had lifelong careers and they stayed in the same field. And Carmen, you're a good example of that. But I also imagine that there were probably opportunities when any one of us stepped off of where we started and went off in another direction. And sometimes it could be a false start, but you've got to try it out. And other times it takes you off in another direction and it's very satisfying and you never look back. So I guess my advice would be to follow where your interests take you. And sometimes where you start isn't always exactly where your interest is, and you get to follow it, 4 years, 10 years later. It's out there in the future, and so don't lose sight of it, even if what you're interested in isn't immediately available in terms of a work opportunity. And in terms of kind of keeping yourself up and positive when the challenges are there. I would say it's great to have, that's where your peers and your mentors are there to support you and kind of give you the added girls that you may need, and also to just take stock on what you've done before and say, I've succeeded in these areas and I can do it again, and it's always worth the effort to try. But every day isn't always, sunshine. There are some dark days, but you've got to be able to kind of look down and see the light at the end of the tunnel and try to stay positive.
And can any of you, and Catherine, you can answer this question, or anyone, can you share your story of defining adversity, when you face some adversity in your career that defined you?
All these powerful women, and nobody wants to take this, and I know they've all faced adversity at times. So I really talk, and Kela and I have talked about this often, it really is important to have resilience. Every back is not a time to quit. If you're tired, rest, and then get back at it. I think that's really important. So when I face adversity, and I've had more times than bad, but there have been those folks that, just test you. But what I think to myself is, they have an issue. It's their issue, not mine. It's their issue, not mine. I'm looking ahead. I'm moving forward. And my train is going down the track here, and that's the way it is. There will be people who don't think you can do it because fill in the blank. You haven't had enough experience. You haven't had enough time. You aren't the right shape, size, color, gender, whatever it is. It's their issue, not yours. You have to rise up on your own and reach your own capabilities and meet your own dreams. And so I think that's one of the things that's really helped me at those times when it's been tough, to reach down and think, it's not my issue, it's theirs. I'm going to do what I need to do. And also, of course, making sure, and I'll make it brief, but that you have good people in your life that you can count on, good mentors, good friends, strong family support. All those things matter as well.
Does anyone else want to answer that?
Well, I'll start by reflecting on a story. I remember when I first started my organizational development consulting back in 1995. And there was a UW student that was doing a paper and somehow found my name and called me and wanted to do an information interview with me. And one of her first questions was, as a African-American woman, as a African-American and a woman, how have you overcome the adversity that you've encountered? And I said, well, that's interesting that you're presuming that I've encountered adversity, and the very things you are asking in the question that would be things to overcome, being African-American and a woman, to me are double assets. And that's how I hold it, that's how I move, that's how I communicate. So that's one thing, is your mindset about yourself, regardless of what anybody else thinks or says, really determines your trajectory more than anything else. And also, there's two other things I would share. Mentorship was mentioned, and I think we can hear that a lot and not act on it. And I'm not going to do that, but if I did ask the entire room, who here has a mentor? And a mentor relationship is a conscious, intentional relationship. So you can't be someone's mentee and they don't know it. So I've had people say, Debrena's my mentor. I'm like, wait, whoa, when did we have that conversation? If I asked the group, how many of us would raise our hand to say we have a mentor, that we are a mentee to somebody, and that is a defined and intentional relationship? We probably may not raise as many hands in here as we want. So mentorship is like, I use the example at Chicago O'Hare Airport. They have this one stretch between gates that is like 300 yards of a moving sidewalk. And I remember one day getting on the moving sidewalk, and I was walking, and then there was a gentleman on the regular, just on the walkway, and he was walking, but I I was moving faster because I was walking and the momentum of the sidewalk. So by the time we got to the end of the strip, I was 100 yards ahead of him. That's what mentorship is like. You're going to get there anyway, but you are going to be accelerated and you will get there much faster because of the experience, the wisdom, and the insight that you can ask from somebody else and not have to wait for the lived experience yourself. So mentorship is so, so, so crucial. And then also information interviews. If someone is doing something or they're at a place in their career and it's a career path you aspire to, ask to set up an information interview. Have your questions ready. Have your journal or your digital recorder ready, whatever to capture that information. But it is amazing to me how many people are so willing, you don't have to pay them for their time, it's not a consulting fee, are willing to share with you the answers to your questions. And I don't think we do enough information interviews. And make the bold request. And I'll just close by coming back to the asking and the making the bold requests. I remember when I published my first book, or not I, but HarperCollins, my first book, and I wanted to have it in Essence magazine. And Essence magazine at the time was the foremost magazine for African American women in the United States. And I always had this goal of if I ever had a national book deal, I'd want my book in Essence. And I got this idea that I would send a Federal Express package directly to the editor-in-chief of the magazine, Susan L. Taylor. And I did it because I didn't think many people were thinking that she would get it and had reasons as to why you don't want to send something to the editor-in-chief. Well, when you have your name on a FedEx, that's who it goes to. Maybe their assistant would open it, but it's going to get to their office. And I made a bold request. Would you feature my book in your magazine? I think it's a fit with your target market. And guess what? The month it came out, I had a book review, 2 pages in Essence magazine. And everyone said, how did you get into Essence? I asked. So that will take care of a lot of adversity. You ask bold questions, you ask for a mentor, someone to mentor you, you ask to have an information interview. You'd be amazed how many people don't ask, and asking will put you right ahead of the group.
So I can talk about adversity. So brown girl, grew up in small town Idaho, and as the only, I was hot. I mean, it's like if anyone wanted to challenge me, I was ready to go, right? But now through meditation and martial arts, I've found that actually you can have power in quietness. And also, you don't have to fight your own battles. We've talked a lot about having your network of people. There are times when I still get hot, but I calm it down, I talk to my team, and they kind of help me think through problems, and then I'm able to come back, I think, stronger. I mean, I think it's like if you had a pencil and you were to snap it in half, it's really easy to do. But if you had a bundle of pencils and you tried to break that, that's like me surrounded by my team. It's like, you have your team that's making you stronger, and it's, then I don't have to be hot under the collar, so it makes me stronger.
Kim Vu, were you going to answer that question? Okay.
I was actually just on the topic of mentorship. I think, the first part of mentorship is the ask, right? But I think the even more critical part after you get over that first initial ask is the follow through. And it happens on both sides, right? Both as the mentee and also as the mentor. And, I recently had the experience, both mentee-mentor experience, where I had someone who had reached out to me to mentor her. And, we sat down, we talked. She asked me for some advice around some of the things that I've observed in her work and where she could improve. So I watched, I gave her feedback. I watched her write everything down. A year later, she reaches out to me and she says, hey, I just wanted to grab coffee with you. I want to let you know how far I've gotten with the feedback that you've given me. which I have to tell you, I've never had anybody ever do. And I went to grab coffee with her. I sat down with her. She said, these are the 3 things you told me to work on. Here's how I've advanced in it. Here's what I've been doing to try to improve in those areas. How else can you help me get even further along? As someone who was mentoring her, that just made me super excited to want to continue to develop her. And so I think when you think about those relationships that you're building, because you also know, like, I think a lot of times the person that we aspire to be mentored by, someone who likely is probably got a full schedule, has a lot of things going on, but is gonna make time for you. So how do you make that time valuable for that interaction, right? So that you get more of that time with that individual. And then on the flip side, I have a mentor, someone that I really admire, who when I first moved here 5.5 years ago, she made time for me. And we sat down, and very, very rarely am I ever caught flat-footed, but she caught me flat-footed because she asked me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I had just started my job. So I was like, I don't know, I'm still trying to figure out where the bathroom is, right? I was like, I have no idea, right? But I hated the idea of knowing that someone that I highly regarded, that I wanted so badly to be my mentor, and I didn't have an answer for her. So I went back and did my homework and came back to her and said, here are the things that I'm focused on, here are the things that I'm doing, here's where I need help, and can you help me? And so she gave me some advice. I took that. A few months later, I got a promotion, and I went back to her, and I shared that with her, and she was super excited. And she's like, okay, awesome. When do we meet next? What's next? And started planning out the next 3 to 5 years. So I think, when we talk about mentorship and getting those tidbits of information and advisement to help us move forward, I think are really key to that number one ask. But that other part that really makes it sticky and makes that person continue to be your advocate and even potentially down the line become your sponsor, that's the follow-through piece that I think is really critical.
Awesome. So this question's open to anyone, and then from there, I'm going to come to the audience. Male allyship. Can any of you talk about a time that you had a male ally that helped you get to the next level in your career?
I'll start since I have the mic. My career, I've been predominantly male industries. Started out as an attorney, and then moved into finance, and then now I serve on corporate and nonprofit boards. And we talk about mentorship. I think it's really important to have mentors of female mentors, male mentors, and people of color, because there are certain rules out there in the workplace, and then there are the unwritten rules that you just don't know about. And so it's, if you do have people that represent different groups that can help, can help you navigate those, tricky rules. I'm on a corporate board, and quite frankly, the reason I'm on this board is because of my mentor. It was an all-male board for the last 10 years. It's been around for 10 years, all-male board. I'm the first woman. And there was someone inside who had vouched for me and pulled me in and said, hey, yeah, Cindy's legit. You should pay attention to her. So that's how I got the interview. And so it's very important, I think, to make sure that you have multiple genders and diversity with your mentors.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and I just want to say thank you all for being here. It's so inspiring to be able to hear from so many women, especially you sitting up there, who are wonderful, empowered, intelligent leaders who I look up to. I think one thing that we haven't touched on today is work-life balance. As a woman, this is a topic that I think comes up a lot. I was reading an article recently that said about the pay gap, which is something that I feel very strongly about. We work very hard, just as hard as men and all types of people, and still get paid less today. That's something that I feel strongly about making a change in every day. But on top of that, we do typically more work at home. I think the stat that I read was that we do over 9 hours extra a week on household chores and errands. And that's on top of our regular jobs. So do you have any tips or anecdotes from how you personally are balancing a very busy schedule with what's going on in your personal lives with perhaps family or children or anything extracurricular?
I'll start with that. I think it affects a lot of women in medicine, especially. In fact, there was a story earlier this month where a particular doctor in Texas actually said, well, women make less money in medicine because they work less. And it's because they don't understand what a woman's life entails. And there is a huge pay gap, especially in medicine. I think it's important to do something you're passionate about. So I can tell you personally, my life, work that I do, I'm so passionate about. I think I'm able to find that work-life balance because a lot of what I do gives me joy, and then I don't think so much of it as work. But it is definitely important that we carve out time and we find jobs that support us. And I think it's important for mothers to be paid time off to breastfeed their children, and we need to support mothers for childcare. We need to change society to support mothers so they can find this work-life balance. We cannot do it on our own.
Yeah, my question was, were there any specifically like people in your life that you loved and that you valued and whose opinions that you took truly to heart that probably set you off onto a path that you didn't necessarily want to take? And how was it being able to like please yourself but also please those around you?
I have a lot of women in my life who I really, really love. And they push me to be my best, of course, and I know that they want the best for me, but sometimes what they push me, for instance, like a path career, is not necessarily what I want to take, but my first and foremost, I always want to make them happy. So did you ever have situations in your life where you felt like you had to make someone happy, but you didn't feel happy yourself?
Yeah, certainly. So I have a tiger mom. And so, we immigrated from Vietnam, and I was, very dutiful. And so coming to the United States, my mom had left her family behind, and so I wanted to, just please her. And so I had three choices. I could become a doctor, a lawyer, or a nun, according to my mom. And so I'm like, I like boys. I'm squeamish around blood. I'm taking the LSAT. So that's how I ended up at law school. And so I was an attorney for 6 years. And then, finally, I just realized that, there's so much more. There are other ways that I can define myself and make myself successful, which my mom didn't understand. And so created my own path. And now she's not as worried and is very grateful that I did.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Bridges, and I am a first. So my background is actually mechanical engineering, and I'm a first to open my own company in my family, and I'm doing engineering consulting. So for those who... Let's give it up, guys. So for those of you who have ventured into entrepreneurship, business ownership, and even those clearly who are running businesses, can you just give advice to those of us who are doing that? Because sometimes it really is daunting when your family, frankly, thinks you're a little bit crazy. Because I left a corporate job. I worked in corporate America for 10 years in the aerospace industry, which was a great opportunity. But I left my job a couple of years ago, and so now I'm building a business. And it is a little bit scary, but I also feel very proud of myself. So can you give advice to those of us who are doing that and those who want to do it? And yeah, that's it.
So I'm fortunate because I'm third-generation entrepreneur. My brother has his own business. My sister has her own business. My dad has his own business. My mother has her own business. And all the cousins on my dad's side, we all have our own businesses. So that runs a little strong in our bloodline. So there was support. So when you talked about entrepreneurship in my family, there was a whole group of people cheering you on. So that's one difference. But nonetheless, from a strategic standpoint, one of the things I don't see new business owners spend enough time on is not just getting clear on what you offer and what you do, because we tend to do a good job on that, but getting clear on your distinctive competencies. That means, what do you do better, differently, and that sets you apart from others who do something similar? And to spend time on that piece and to know what's being offered and how you're distinct in that, what your unique gift, talent, skills, and abilities are as expressed through your business, will really set you apart. I remember when I started my company, I was 26 years old. I was new to Seattle. I had just come from college in Southern California, didn't even really know the highways and byways of Seattle because I grew up in Lacey. But I spent 3 months really thinking about what are my distinctive competencies, with Post-its on the wall and doing information interviews with the leading organizational development consultants in Seattle. And when I opened the doors to my business 3 months later, I had a contract the very first month out of the gate, and it hasn't stopped since. So one of my recommendations would be spend the time getting clear on what sets you apart from those in your industry that offer a similar kind of service. Then on your website, then on your landing page, then on your business Facebook page, you clearly articulate those distinctive competencies so that when those who your target market read it, they go, oh, we're clear about what sets her apart, and her company is the one for us. So being sure that messaging is consistent across all mediums that you use to introduce, communicate about, and market your business.
Hi there, my name is Tracy. My question is for Chief Best, actually. My question is, how do you take the pulse of the different employee groups that work for you, meaning finding out what their experience is like while they're employed, and how do you, second question is, how do you keep a level playing field for employees getting opportunities for training, getting opportunities to move into positions of credibility, leveling the playing field for promotions?
Okay, so the first question, I just want to answer in two parts. So the first question again was just making sure that...
How do you keep in touch with all the different employee groups that you have, women, men, LGBT? How do you find out what their life is like in the trenches?
You know, honestly, I just go out and I go see them in the trenches, right? So last week I was at the Southwest Precinct and I walked into the roll call and I hung out with the officers and asked them and talked to them. And 2 days before that, I was at the West Precinct. And a week before that, I was also at the West Precinct. And 2 weeks before that, I was at the North Precinct. And I go out and I just talk to people. And I hear what I want to know. The best way, I mean, obviously we have a chain of command, and there's officers and sergeants and lieutenants and captains and assistant chiefs and a deputy chief and a COO and the chief of police. But by the time that information filters up, it can be pretty filtered by the time it gets to you. So sometimes I just go out and ask somebody. I'm just sitting with them at roll call, so what's the real deal on so-and-so? You know, and they'll tell me, right? And so that's one way to keep in touch, you know, to make sure that you actually, I'm sure you've heard of the 1-minute manager or management by walking around, but it really is important that you do that because that's how you really get to know what is occurring, what's happening in the organization. I obviously know every single one of the 2,000 employees, but I know quite a few of them, and I try to meet and talk to as many as I can in as many venues as I can. And then the other question was about promotions and...
How do you keep a level playing field for getting opportunities for training, which equals credibility?
You know, a couple of things. One is that everybody has to have certain amounts of training. I mean, everyone needs to go through, for example, I'm really proud of the fact that we have, you know, implicit bias training. As the police department, I think everybody knows there's always issues about bias and race and how we're dealing with folks. So we want to make sure that everybody has that training. And everybody has, you know, defensive tactics and de-escalation and those types of trainings for everybody. But then as we, you know, go up through the ranks, we want to make sure that we are being fair and who gets other specialized training. I had opportunities, and I want to make sure that when we send people to training, it's expensive, that, you know, I look at, you know, everybody who's going. So I want to make sure that we have as much representation, men, women, people of color, all of that, that get training. And it's deliberate. right? Because we tend to, even if we don't know it, everybody has their biases. We tend to sort of lean toward often people who look like us or think like us or whatever, have common things. So we need to make sure that we're including other people. And we really try hard to do that. And I try to deliver that message to all the folks who work for me. I have a really good command team, and they know that if you look at them, you're going to see a wide variety of people there, maybe much more so than you had in the past, and there's a reason for that, because I want to make sure that we reflect, reflect the community in every way that we can. So really important that you do that. I said we've been talking about it a lot, but you just really have to be deliberate. And Kela, you brought it up, but certainly not only are women friends, but we have a lot of male allies out there too who are very helpful. I mean, the first person who came and sort of just reached out and said, hey, I want you to come work in the chief's office and work for me was Chief Kulikowski, a man. And he actually, years later, that was almost 20 years ago, when things were kind of shaky about whether I'd be here or not, he wrote a wonderful editorial out of the blue. And he was not even in the country when he wrote that and sent it in. So you just never know where your allies are going to be. And when people do that for you, you want to make sure that you reach back and also are helping people.
Thank you very much, Chief Best. We're going to wrap it up, guys. We got like 15 minutes before the night totally ends. I want to thank our influential panel, Debrena Jackson Gandy, if you could stand up for us, Cindy Runger, Carmen Best, Uma, Kim Fu, Catherine Gibson, and Lisa Chin. Give it up to our influential women of Washington State. One thing I want to leave with before we close this panel out and give it back to our MC is each of you will receive a 15-month membership to Katie Hall Foundation. We need you, and we really need your support and your help to be able to continue to push these messages out to our local community and eventually nationally. By 2020, Katie Hall Foundation will be a national organization. Mark my words, we will be a national organization, and it starts with women just like you. So thank you so much. Please give it up to our panel.